which talks details about the adoption today, right? So about 85% of the organizations are using services from different clouds as of today. As of now that we speak, there are about 85% of the organization already using the services in some form, right? So you're not totally outside of the cloud adoption. You're already using it in some form or the other. Either you have certain accesses of applications which are on the cloud, SaaS-based platforms that is available, right? Your organization have a lot of services rendering to you, right? These can be around in the areas of your HR, or it could be also remote services that can be offered to your clients, the VDIs. Most of it is today on the cloud. About 93% of the organization will use these services with multiple cloud providers. So you would not restrict it to just one cloud provider. You would go ahead and start using the cloud services of multiple cloud providers like the AWS, the Google. There are some private players as well who offer cloud services. So there would be a mix of multiple offerings that would be provided, and these would be accessible to an individual organization to accept those services on the cloud. 53% of the C-level executives are pushing a cloud-first policy today, right? So you do not need to all the time look for resources within the organization, right? Cloud-first approach can be one of the mechanisms that will be available, and that is a much more accessible. You can get things set up quicker and faster, much more secure for you to access, right? So cloud-first is a policy that today the C-level executives are pushing for. I'd like to speak about what the Gartners as well as the Forresters talk about, right? So hybrid cloud solution will continue to drive the overall cloud adoption in India. You would have seen that we were a little slow in adoption, but then of late, if you see, there's a lot of adoption on the cloud already. Again, on the hybrid clouds are the future state where your compute and the storage for enterprises are available. They have gone the days when the organization did not find cloud or the cloud storage secure for holding the data or keeping the data, right, in transit between that is the client locations as well as the organization location, right? So transferring data across cloud has been an adoption that is in place. Right Scales talks about organizations that are already running applications. There is 3:1 on the cloud, majority on the cloud, very little on the hybrid environment or the ecosystems as of today. Multi-cloud, FI talks about multi-cloud enables the best cloud for the app strategy as well. So most of the application, if you look at even the banking applications, are today accessible on the cloud itself. Moving on. Let me give you an understanding and the perception that has evolved over the years, right? So from the year 2006 to 2010, a cloud offering or cloud adoption was not a key focus for organizations or enterprises, right? It was only around 2011 onwards, there was some adoption on the cloud for dev and testing purpose, but obviously nothing on production, right? From 2013 onward, you would see that some of the production workloads moved into cloud, right? But there was always that question mark, how secure is it, okay? From about 2016 onwards, we started seeing a lot of adoptions on the cloud, very little inheritance of the IT infrastructure within the data centers. Most of the organizations started adopting it on the cloud itself, right? Now, for 2018 onwards, the concept was to utilize multiple cloud offerings put together, right? So this also brought in some complexities. We will talk about it. We'll touch base about it in the upcoming slides. The cloud transformation journey, if you look at, right, starting with the traditional IT, where the dedicated physical homogeneous infrastructure was in place, right? Every component, control, storage was added to the traditional IT infrastructure. So space was a constraint. The organization had to have that space within the organization or hosted in some kind of a data center which they access. Connectivity was one of the major issues. You would have seen a lot of point-to-point connections, MPLS connections, right, which were complex in nature to manage, right? The more the number of connectivities, there are situations of downtimes, right? The skill sets round the clock working, there is NOC services round the clock working to keep up the uptime for the traditional IT. Now, we started evolving with that state, right? And the traditional IT started connecting and integrating to the private cloud, right? Sort of moving some of those workloads onto the private clouds, then moving into the public cloud. So this was much more adopted, and then now is more of the multi-cloud ecosystem, and we started managing it centrally as well. That was one of the concerns, but then we've started managing well. The governance was one of the key concerns, but that is now well accepted and well managed with the organization. The future would, of course, be the hybrid. The current state, if you see, it is a combination of the traditional IT and private public cloud. The future will have some of the footprints again on the traditional IT infrastructure, and largely it would be on the public cloud. That is what we would envisage. That's how the future IT or the hybrid IT would look like. Manageability again would be centrally. There will be managed services organization which will be extending their services in operationalizing, also ensuring the security of the ecosystem where the hosted services is rendered to the organization. Some of the drivers that allowed us to adopt, or the organizations to adopt the cloud: flexibility and choices in the applications, right? Now, there were scenarios in the past where the organization had to purchase licenses, right? Today, these subscriptions are available at the cloud providers, right? So you can go to Google, you can look for a certain applications or a service which is offered by Google. You could also look at something which is in parity with Google on AWS or any other cloud providers like the Azures and so on, right? So you need not have to have that multi-year contract with the OEMs, because all of this or most of these applications, the SaaS-based applications, are available on the cloud. You're extending your IT infrastructure, the resources of your IT from the on-premise infrastructure without much capital expense. You're not spending it on day one, but you have a staggered spending over the years. And at any point, if you wish, you can always do a lift and shift to other ecosystem. You can bring it back to the traditional IT if you look. That is a much more feasible option or viable option that is still in place. So all of these are possible today with the adoption of cloud, right? You're maximizing your returns on your existing premises IT investments because most of it is moving onto the cloud. You are having the right balance between speed, innovation, and security. There was a time when we were not very sure of the kind of security that is in place or the controls in place. Today you can manage it. Today you can audit it completely, right? You have your own tenant which is secluded, right, without much of the interactions with the other tenants. That is in place. So you have a complete visibility and control of your applications, of your controls, and your crown jewels, which are critical assets that is hosted on your cloud. Some of the other pointers which I would say: migrate workloads as needed between private and public. We spoke about that. Integrate your core businesses, your systems and your records to enable interaction with customers. So your interaction, I mean, we have federation models that is available where you interact with multiple clients. You can interact with multiple applications, right? You do not need to look at the interoperability challenges, right? There are few, but then the most of it is addressed. There are mechanisms to address an interoperability within the cloud ecosystem as well, right? Need of an offsite location for business continuity. You do not need to look for a provider on an offsite location. You can move complete, have your complete DR set up on a cloud. Let's say you have Bangalore as the location, which is your primary. You could have your DR at a location on the cloud. You can choose which location you would like to. So those flexibility is now available with the adoption, and these are some of the drivers on the cloud. With all this, there are challenges, right? So we spoke about a few of them, right? The bigger challenges is managing, right? Governing it. As you increase in the footprints and multiple cloud scenarios, governance becomes a very critical, aspect. Security becomes very, very important because you have your users connecting to cloud, single cloud, multi-cloud. They connect from their home, their offices, right? So it is very important to understand from an identity perspective which user is doing